Every year to end the year, I put together lists of what I think Apple did best and worst for the last 12 months. I'll have the best list up in a couple days, but for now, I'm going to spend a cold minute focusing on the negative, what Apple got wrong, and how I'd like to see it fix things for next year. Not because I'm a jerk or a hater or anything else I get called every time I do this, but because every up has its down. Every success hides some failure, and there's no company or product that is really so great it can't possibly stand to get any better. So, what's made the list this year? I'm Rene Ritchie. Welcome back to Vector. So great to have you here. Buckle up. This ride is going to be beyond bumpy. Siri is going to go down as one of the biggest unforced errors in Apple's history. After being first to market with the service as part of the iPhone 4S, mismanagement and neglect led Apple to not only lose its huge lead to the likes of Amazon and Google, but to leave its customers with over half a decade of subpar, error-prone, and in some cases simply broken service. Apple did make strides in 2018. It moved Siri out from under Eddie Q to Craig Federighi, and then to freshly hired from Google and blessedly AI-focused John Gianandrea. It also managed to ship HomePod in the spring, not only with AirPlay and a host of long-standing core audio issues fixed, but with a really good, if severely limited, Siri implementation. But Apple is still so far behind that absolutely no pressure can be let up. It's going to take everything the company has, every ounce of commitment, focus, resolve, and funding to dig itself out and start building itself up. I made a video earlier this year that included the most important things that I thought Siri needed to really be competitive again. And that included making Siri more personal so it understands our context better and can be more conversational. Expanding SiriKit and shortcuts so that they're more useful to more people across more use cases. Making Siri more consistent so that it works as similarly as possible across all devices and regions. Turning Siri into a mesh network so all nodes are part of a bigger, smarter, more useful collective, but ultimately just working towards Siri OS. Because not having an interface that includes voice and AI first-class options is soon going to be like not having multi-touch, not having graphics. And it's not just a problem for Apple. Given how terrible Facebook, Google, and maybe even Amazon, honestly, I'm not sure about them yet, have been with privacy and security, having a competitive Siri isn't just nice, it's necessary. Without it, people are going to choose data harvesting that does what they want over privacy that frustrates and fails them almost every single time. Because of JG's hire, his reporting directly to Tim Cook, and the amount of Siri job listings going up and up, I'm not willing to bet, but I am willing to hope again that a series of improvements and updates are being readied for the very near future. Apple typically owns the mindshare in any category in which it competes. Even if you don't have an iPhone or iPad or Apple Watch or Mac, you hear about them all the time. You know all about them. They get copied by almost all other vendors, and they're the grade almost every other vendor's products are curved against. Now that the smartphone market is beyond mature though, and has become the platform upon which everything else is being built, it's not so much the big things that matter anymore, but the multitude of many smaller things, including HomeKit things. And Apple simply doesn't have the same mindshare there. It just doesn't, and that was beyond notable last CES. Amazon and Alexa were everywhere, and Google and its home products weren't that far behind. Apple hadn't released HomePod yet, but HomeKit had been out for years. It just didn't get anywhere nearly as much attention, and it didn't demand it either. First, Apple doesn't attend CES, well, not in any public-facing capacity at least. Back in the days of Macworld Expo, that didn't matter. The iPhone launch, the MacBook Air unveiling, it wasn't uncommon for Apple to completely overshadow the bigger, louder show. But for the last long while, Apple hasn't done anything big until March or June, and it hasn't really mattered because no one else was doing anything big at the beginning of the year either. But now we have all the connected health and home and other devices, and everyone not Apple gets the spotlight all to themselves. The branding doesn't really help either. Works with Alexa, works with Google Home, works with HomeKit? HomeKit is a framework. All kits are in Apple land, going back to AppKit and UIKit and forward to SiriKit and ARKit. But they've never been used as part of public marketing before. App buttons, for example, don't say works with UIKit, they say download from App Store. Works with Siri, like works with Alexa, would be great if Siri had been rock solid for years already. But an even better, even more encompassing, even more consistent brand would be Apple Home, as in Apple logo home, like Apple Watch, Apple TV, and Apple Music. It's not a huge thing, but huge things never are. It's just a shorter, sweeter, simpler, and more welcoming thing. And if Apple could figure out a way to be at CES, or to counter-program CES again with its own accessories-focused event, or maybe just as a sequel to The Rock using Siri around the house, anything that demands attention, then maybe, just maybe, Apple wouldn't be excluded from that conversation next year. Maybe they wouldn't own it, but they would absolutely be part of it. Apple shipped music to 100 countries on day one. It has editorial teams in many regions discovering and promoting local talent, and otherwise doing some pretty amazing things for the industry and for listeners. For a long time, Apple has had a consequential lead internationally, providing media and other services, even Siri language support, in far more places to far more people than anyone else. But over the last few years, that seems to have slowed down. Apple News was announced as part of iOS 9 in 2015. It launched in the United States, with Australia and the UK following soon thereafter. Then, nothing. Over 3 years of nothing, and more nothing. No doubt news is non-trivial, requiring editors and arrangements with publications on a local level. But again, Apple Music, 100 countries at launch, editors everywhere. Maybe Apple is waiting to launch its new texture-based magazine and newspaper subscription service before adding new countries. But if so, at the very least, it could have offered basic add-your-own feeds to every other region in the meantime. In the age of the internet, decades after RSS, there's no reason I shouldn't be able to read Daring Fireball or Six Colors in the news app no matter where I live, from day one. By the same token, there are many places still waiting on basic Siri service, on the TV app, on HomePod, on Apple Pay, and outside the US, on Apple Pay Cash. Initially, Apple often lists countries where products and services will be coming next, but after a while, that dries up, and no one knows what to expect or when. I understand the desire not to create expectational debt, to shut up and ship, but that only works when and if you ship. I have no idea how difficult those services are to roll out internationally, but what we do know is that we're customers, just like everybody else, and we pay for our Apple products, just like everyone else. And in some cases, thanks to exchange rates, tariffs, and taxes, way more than many others, and we get fewer, sometimes far fewer features and services internationally for our money. I get that having to deal with international financial institutions is no walk in the park for Apple Pay, and having to tune Siri for every dialect across multilingual titles and with vastly different metadata in every region makes HomePod launches take longer than many people assume. But making the news and TV apps available everywhere, all at once, and whatever open feeds and local apps can work with them now would be a good start. The biggest now problem in the App Store this year has been scam apps. Apps that trick people into egregiously expensive subscriptions and essentially steal their money for a period of time. Developer David Barnard has done a great job documenting the problem. I'll link to his article in the description below. Some have suggested Apple doesn't want to fix it because it would negatively impact App Store revenue. I don't believe that. Apple historically has been really good at seeing the long-term value of taking short-term hits if it improves customer experience or if it's simply the right thing to do. But whatever the reason, it is and always has taken Apple far too long to address App Store abuse. The company will kill an app even by a well-known and loved indie developer in an instant if it wants to send a message about some user experience or some guideline or another. But knockoffs and scams persist for weeks and months. Apple just has to do better here, because customers literally being ripped off is a far bigger and more important problem than a calculator being stuffed into a widget or an iPhone icon showing up in an app. Since Phil Schiller has taken over the US App Store, we've seen a long series of qualitative improvements, from rapid review times to updated guidelines to a whole new App Store experience. If 2019 is the year Apple solves scams, I think everyone would be profoundly better for it. I was on the fence about including scaling in this list again this year. Here's what I said about it last year. Once upon a time, Apple made desktop computers. Now Apple makes computers for your desk, your lap, your living room, your hands, your pockets, your wrists, your ears, and they're working on ones for your eyes and for your car. They're also working on everything that runs and plays on all of those computers, both in terms of software and services. Yet, through it all, Apple has maintained its functional organization and small, focused, team-based approach. Our greatest strength is often our greatest weakness, so too Apple's culture. It's what lets the company do so much, but what also causes so much to be left undone. I'm not one of those people who thinks Apple needs to abandon its past to better serve the future. I don't think Apple needs to or should become IBM or GE. I think Apple can have its culture and scale it too, but I think it's got to do a much better job shoring up its foundations as it keeps building. It shouldn't take a come to Jesus moment to get us to the next Mac Pro and Pro Display. It shouldn't be 3 or more years without a Mac Mini refresh or continuity for media. Siri shouldn't feel like there's one server on the farm that just can't handle questions and we hit it randomly a few times a day or week. It shouldn't take a HomePod to get AV rock solid. It shouldn't take the worst possible headlines to get Apple to properly explain battery-based throttling. And it absolutely shouldn't take root/blank and other exploits being posted in public to get the security teams engaged and quality assurance overhauled. For a company so good at fusing efficiency cores with performance cores, wide angle with telephoto lenses, local storage with online, and making sure it fills the gaps at the bottom left by profound increases at the top, it makes me wonder if a similar approach couldn't work for Apple itself. Continue to let the teams run as fast as they can and work on all the new features that Apple and customers want to see, but slide in other teams behind them that focus exclusively on maintaining and improving what's already there. These are all growing pains, the problems that come with a company based on focus having to focus on multiple things at the same time. They're problems of scale. Now, in large part, I think Apple has addressed a lot of this. It pushed back HomePod to fix underlying problems with audio and to solidify Siri. It pushed back some of iOS 12 to iOS 13 so that key engineers could work on performance improvements instead. It updated and shipped a new Mac Mini and a new MacBook Air. And yeah, I'll pause right there so you can hit me with your very best finally. We got new Apple Watch and iPad Pro designs and a new iPhone with XR. There are a few things we didn't get though. No Amber Lake MacBooks or Coffee Lake iMacs. And while Apple canceled the Airport Extreme and repeated that the new Pro Display will be coming as soon as next year with the new modular Mac Pro, the iPad Mini and iPod Touch are still in limbo. So I'm gonna say I've gone from being cautiously pessimistic to cautiously optimistic that Apple has figured out how to handle a functional organization at scale. But I'm gonna keep it on the list for another year just so that we can see if this was a one-off or if this is a new normal, if Apple can keep up the focus on both quality and quantity in 2019. Now, if you're interested in getting involved and helping out with all of this stuff, a great place to start is Brilliant. Brilliant is a problem-solving website that teaches you the concepts behind logic, machine learning, artificial intelligence, algorithms, and more. Instead of passively listening to lectures, you get to master concepts by solving fun and challenging problems. And Brilliant provides you with the tools and frameworks you need to tackle these challenges. Brilliant's thought-provoking content based around breaking up complexities into bite-sized, understandable chunks will lead you from curiosity to mastery. So what are you waiting for? Check out brilliant.org/vector and get started now. Thanks, Brilliant, and thanks to all of you for supporting the show. A lot of people have been complaining that Apple's prices have gotten too goddamn high. I think there is an argument to be made that higher prices, while great for Wall Street and its never-ending thirst for higher average sale price, ASP, starts pricing people out of the Apple ecosystem. On the flip side, Apple isn't simply charging more for the same products. It's making more expensive products and then charging roughly the same margins on them. The iPhone X series are expensive products to make. Same with the new iPads, same with the new Macs. And these are the products Apple wants to make. But if people start perceiving Apple differently, as going from affordable luxury to luxury they simply can't afford anymore, that's bad for everyone. It's also what happens when phones, like apps and everything else, go from scarcity to commodity. As bad as that is for Apple with its huge revenue stream, imagine how bad that is for most phone vendors who make almost no money on their products, which people still complain are priced too goddamn high. Here, I think adjustments need to be made. Apple has to keep doing what it did with the 9.7-inch iPad this year, and that is push its technologies like Apple Pencil down to entry-level price points. A new low-priced iPhone and Mac would be great there too. Also, on the high end, Apple has to better explain the value proposition when prices do go up. Steve Jobs did this with the original iPhone, laying out what each part cost separately and then how much it would cost altogether. With iPad, he also managed to set expectations really high and then undercut them by half. Perception really is reality. If new products have more expensive parts, say what they are and why. Or maybe even a slide like the environmental impact one that shows the benefits of everything from Genius bars to the education available at Apple retail to the high resale value of devices, anything that shows the value more than just the cost. So customers can reset expectations and not just leave feeling like they have less money in their pockets for no particular reason. At least that's what I think. Now let me know what you think about any and all of the items in my list above and any and all items you think I might have left off that should have been included. Hit like, hit subscribe, and then hit up the comments below and let me know. And thank you so much for watching.